This presentation are going to be about dragon dreaming and sociocracy, or what we call dreamocracy. How can we do this mix of these two methodologies together? And to start with, we would like to introduce ourselves. So I'm going to ask to, oh no, Ted, you wanted to say a few words before that. I'm sorry.
Well, I just wanted to welcome everybody and express and do the typical host thing. And I hope I can say it without it sounding like phrases, like, you know, just because I'm so happy this is happening. And I want to talk real quick about the connection between Sociocracy for All, SOFA, and Nara and Tanya. We've met each other in person, which is pretty amazing because we're all sort of operating globally, and seeing each other in person is very precious. They invited us to Brazil last year, and that was a wonderful time there. And Nara is now also currently serving on SOFA Mission Circle. So there's a lot of connection between the people doing Sociocracy in Brazil and Sociocracy for All, and it's always fun to do something together. And this I'm in particular happy about because you kept talking about dragon dreaming, and I know some things, but this is always an opportunity for us to just sit back and learn. That's always precious as well. So I'm looking forward to this, and I was very happy about this cooperation. Check.
Cool, thank you so much. I think I can speak also for Tanya that we're delighted also to be here. And it's a pleasure to have had you here in Brazil as well. And I hope you come again soon, maybe to launch the book. Cool. So then I'd like to invite Tanya then to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tanya. I'm going to present today a little bit about Dreamocracy together with Nara. Just a little bit about myself. I mean, I've been working with groups for as long as I can remember, really, but I guess in the last 20 years more professionally. And always with a focus on creating collaborative environments where we can dream together and make our dreams come true. I am a dragon dreaming trainer as well as a sociocracy trainer and consultant here in Brazil. And I work with a lot of other social technologies, but I think my focus today is really to focus on organizations and how to help develop regenerative organizations using self-management and dreaming. Today, Nara and I work together in a collective called Bioinspiral because we are inspired by nature. We look towards nature to see what works in nature and bring that into sociocracy and dragon dreaming and into the work that we do with organizations. I am one of the founders of Sociocracy Brazil. We brought sociocracy to Brazil about 5-6 years ago, and now it's really taking off. And that's a bit about me. So I'll hand it over to Nara now.
Thank you. Thank you, dear. And I just realized that we forgot to translate this slide. So it's still in Portuguese, but I promise I'll translate before I send it to you guys. So this is me. I have worked, before I changed to the new paradigm, I worked into the regular system. So I worked in multinationals. I worked at IBM, for instance. I was a project manager there. So I have more than 15 years working, especially in the IT industry, but mainly management positions. And then 6 years ago, in 2013, I had already started, this knowledge of the new ways and was looking for purpose in my life. So I just quit and went into a sabbatical and lived this experience of going into a new way of living and lived in eco-villages. I lived for 2 years in Findhorn in an eco-village in Scotland. And started developing all the knowledge of the social technologies, especially dragon dreaming. So I John Croft was here in Brazil in 2013, so that was the year when I had left. So it was really, really important for me, as I became also a trainer of Dragon Dreaming, and met Tanya and others from the Dragon Dreaming Network here in Brazil. And then that same year when I went to Europe, I managed to connect also to the Dragon Dreaming network in Europe and the international network. And then I decided to spend some time there, and learned about different social technologies, nonviolent communication, and just community living, really. And I started to get in touch with Sociocracy. I had a chance to meet John Buck when I was in Fainthorn, and also James Priest. And when I came back to Brazil in 2016, there was this movement of the Dragon Dreaming Network was kind of bringing Sociocracy into, like Tanya and Ruth were bringing Sociocracy to Brazil. And I just joined them. And then that's how it all started, like my connection with Sociocracy and the Sociocracy Brazil movement, and also how the beginnings of Bioinspiral started, where I work with Tanya today. And that's how we also brought Ted and Jerry to Brazil, like in this movement, in this flow. And I'm excited to be part today of the crowdfunding project to translate and print their book, Many Voices, One Song, in Portuguese. So this is what we're doing, like a big thing in Brazil this year in the Sociocracy movement. So that's a bit about me. And then just to begin with, we would like to clarify this term that we coined, and it was called, it's Dreamocracy. In Portuguese, we say Sociocracy. And that, because when in 2016, when there was this group of people like Tanya and Ruth had organized this bringing of, at the time, James Priest, and there was this deepening advanced course of Sociocracy, and then one of the open spaces, there was this group that started talking about the merging of Dragon Dreaming and Sociocracy. So at that point, Tanya and Ruth, they coined this term. And I think it was in the organizing of the trip, wasn't it? During the organizing of the trip, you started talking about Dreamocracy. This is what we're doing. And then there was this group that was formed. Let me just ask everyone to mute their microphones, because I'm hearing some background noises, please. And then this group, this study group, and then it lasted for 1 year. And then from that group, some people of that group decided to start this consulting agency that we now Bioinspiral, because we realized both and Sociocracy are based on living systems, are based on nature. So that's the common point and the inspiration for the creation of Bioinspiral. Tanya, would you like to add anything to this?
Yeah, I think one thing that I want to say is that I heard some people saying, oh, I use Sociocracy. I want to take Sociocracy to my organization. Oh, I want to find out more about Dragon Dreaming so we can plan our new organization. And I think the reason why we wanted to bring the two together was because Dragon Dreaming in Brazil spread like fire. I mean, it was something that really caught on. And it was something that we felt that people were really attracted to. And not only that, they were able to take it and do it and implement it. And we felt that Sociocracy was something more difficult to be implemented, but that we thought on a deeper level, it was able to help us create organizations and not just projects. So we really were thinking, how do we bring the magic that we feel in Dragon Dreaming to Sociocracy? And how do we bring some of the structure that Sociocracy has to Dragon Dreaming? So we started really feeling this need to connect the two. And even today, we feel that when you connect the two, it's much easier to do what you want to do. you know, it's much easier to use Sociocracy, or it's much easier to use Dragon Dreaming, and it's much easier to develop a project or in an organization. So I think we felt that there was something that was missing in each methodology, and we thought, okay, let's see how we can bring them together. So just a little thing that I wanted to add.
Brilliant, thank you. And so when we were designing these two webinars, we decided that the best way to approach this was to have two webinars, and then the first one to be based on Dragon Dreaming. Many wouldn't know about Dragon Dreaming, so we said, okay, so the first webinar we're going to focus on what is Dragon Dreaming, what are the principles, what are the main concepts, and explain the methodology in a nutshell. And then possible uses together, what have we learned from our experiences, our trials, and then focus on specific items like meetings and, you know, shortcomings. What are the possible shortcomings? So this is the plan, and today we're going. Is it 2 hours? 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
2 hours each. So, well, my time is different from yours, but until 2 here, and probably 1 for some of the people that are in the Eastern time. And that's it. And then we're going to start today with the Dragon Dreaming. If you have any questions, please, you can write down in the chat, but we'll have more for questions as well. Okay, and there will be some exercises that we're going to propose, but most of the time we're going to be with the slides, and it will be more like a lecture today, because there are many concepts and many principles that we have to explain. Okay, Tanya, is there anything you would like to add here, or is it okay if I start?
I think we can start.
Okay.
Okay.
So
has a question they can ask in the chat. Yeah.
So go ahead. You can
okay.
Just take it from here. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'll just compliment whenever.
Okay, so for those of you who do know Dragon Dreaming, it's going to be a review. Okay, but I know a lot of people don't know about Dragon Dreaming, so it's really important for people to know that it's more than just a methodology for co-creating projects. It's also a philosophy. So we need to really bring these key concepts so that people can really get a deeper understanding of the magic behind Dragon Dreaming. So Dragon Dreaming was developed by John Croft and Vivian Alenta. That was his wife. She passed away many years ago, but they're from Australia. And they were part of the Gaia Foundation. And together with a group of people, they started looking at, you know, what are some excellent ways to develop projects, and what are some blockages that we can find along the way. And they went testing things and bringing little bits from different types of very different methodologies until they created the methodology Dragon Dreaming. But it was mainly John Croft and Alenta and Vivian who really worked to structure the methodology. And the methodology really is, like I said, it's for visioning, planning, and implementing projects and celebrating projects. And it's also a philosophy, a way of living life. Okay, so we can go on to the next slide, and we can find the roots of Dragon Dreaming. So Dragon Dreaming has its roots in systems theory, chaos theory, deep ecology, and Aboriginal wisdom. Like I said, it's from Australia. Vivian had a lot of contact with Aboriginals, and she was actually instrumental in helping Aboriginals get back their language. And also John was very close with Joanna Macy. So they were in contact with different key people, which also helped them to really delve into the roots of these different areas and to bring these roots into the methodology. The principles It is very important that when we look at dragon dreaming, we understand what the principles of dragon dreaming are. If you want to go on to the next slide. It's a methodology that unites traditional wisdom, Aboriginal culture, history, but it also brings very modern elements from management techniques. But the point is that it is based on 3 very important principles, and these principles we say must be brought into our projects. If they're not brought into the projects that we use, that we develop using dragon dreaming, they aren't dragon dreaming projects, right? So the principles are service to the earth, so that our projects, they should be based on servicing the earth, and I don't mean they need to be ecological projects, but that we're always with this idea of regenerating, creating projects that are going to be sustainable beyond us, so that they can keep on going on even after we've stopped the project, and that they have this element of taking care of the people who are involved, the people who it will affect in the earth. Building community. So community starts with us, our project, the people who are working together in the project, and also where we will be implementing that project. So always with this idea of strengthening community, because in the end, that's what really sustains us as people. It's one of those things that we long for, recapturing the sense of community. So our projects really should be based on capturing, getting back this sense of community and personal growth. When we do dragon dreaming, we are growing as individuals. And I'll explain that a little bit more. When you actually do the methodology, you really realize that you come into contact with yourself, you come into contact with your dragons. That's where dragons come from, those things that sometimes are those elements that might sabotage our engagement in a project. And those are the things that we work on while we're working on our projects. So we grow by engaging in projects, we grow personally. So I'm just gonna ask whoever's not on mute to please mute your microphone so that we don't get any of the feedback. Thanks. Okay, so Nara, you can keep on going here. And the reason why dragon dreaming was developed in the first place was because it was at a time when it was around the late 70s, early 80s, when there was this movement, an environmental movement, a feminist movement. A lot of movements were going on where we realized that something was happening in the world. There was a movement to make a change in the world. And some people felt that they wanted to do something. A lot of people felt they wanted to do something, but they didn't know what. They wanted to act. So the idea of dragon dreaming was to develop a methodology that put power back into the hands of people to make projects happen. It was a methodology that would help people, any kind of person, have the knowledge that they needed to put things in action. So when we talk about the Great Turning, we are talking about this moment that we're living when we're moving from an industrial growth society to a culture that sustains complex life on the planet. And the idea of the dragon dreaming projects and dragon dreaming is so that we can make this great turning happen as quickly as possible. And when we talk about the great turning, it sometimes feels like, oh yeah, okay, the great turning, but how are we ever going to do that? But that's such a big thing. Well, if we go on to the next slide, we'll realize that there have been actually many great turnings. The first great turning was when we stopped being hunters and gatherers, and we started to stay in one spot and plant our own agriculture and own land. And even though this took place along 300 years, this really was a great turning. This is when we developed a literary society, when we started having an army, when we started creating a tax system. It was a really, really big difference from when we were hunter and gatherers, when we lived in a community that was highly collaborative, to one that wasn't. And this was a great turning, and it happened over about 300 years, but it happened. So there was a great turning. The second great turning started about 400 years ago, and it actually started in Europe with the development of the big ships leaving Portugal to explore many different areas around the world, which led to colonialism and also the rise of the Industrial Revolution, where farmers left the countryside and came to the cities. And now we're seeing another big great turning happen, and this is with the rise of the environmental revolution, the feminist revolution, and also the information revolution, where we see, especially when we look at the internet and we see how information is much more decentralized, we are starting to see that also the way we organize ourselves can be in a more decentralized way as well. And so that's why there's a lot of rise for methodologies that use self-organization, organizations that work as networks, the need for much more transparency. So we're on this cusp of another great turning. The only thing is we're going back and forth. There's a lot of crisis going on. And so the idea with Dragon Dreaming is, okay, how can we get there? How can we make this great turning happen in a way where we can get to this culture where we can sustain complex life on the planet? And to do that,
Can I just add something?
Sure.
There was something that I heard recently that really touched me, that that the beginning of this new great turning that we are talking about started on when the men walked on the moon, because what happened then was that they looked and they saw the earth. So that there's that beautiful picture of the image of the earth. And then we realized, Gaia, we saw this beautiful being that we're all part of. So maybe, like when theory says that this is the beginning of this new great turning. Just a comment.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a major turning point. And I think that today when we see that picture of the earth, we think, oh, now it's just maybe something just common because we've seen it so many times. But imagine when people saw that for the very first time. It was really intense. It was really deep, and it really created in people this deep love. And that was actually when James Lovelock was also able to get his theory published on Gaia as well, which he had tried for years and years. But I think actually having that picture of the earth also helped this movement of him publishing his theory on Gaia. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. And what's really, really important in this great turning is that we have to change our metaphor. So Frederic Laloux talks about this. We talk about this in Dragon Dreaming. We talk about this in Sociocracy, changing the metaphor of, organizations being like machines where I'm a cog, I'm just a part of that big machine, to organizations being like living systems where I'm part of that organization and I'm a nerve ending of that organization. I can feel my environment. I can feel things. I'm able to receive information, perceive things, and that I am able to bring that to the organization, and what I have to bring is important. Okay, and going on to the next slide, this idea of living in looking at our organizations as living systems is crucial to the moment that we're living right now. And I know a lot of people have heard this word VUCA, but in Brazil, we really feel this right now. We feel that we're really living in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous moment. And I don't know, I'm sure everybody heard about what happened in Brazil and Sao Paulo the other day. I mean, day turned into night in a couple of minutes. All of a sudden, this great cloud came, and we thought, I was with my friend, I said, oh my God, it looks like the world's gonna end. It's, I thought it was just gonna pour rain, but it didn't pour rain. It just basically turned into night, and that's because of the burning of the Amazon, So it's really a time where we think, oh my gosh, how do we deal with this? Well, we deal with this developing projects and organizations that work like living systems that can adapt to this volatility and uncertainty and complexity and ambiguousness. So going on to the next slide, how do we look at our projects as living systems? I mean, what does that really mean, projects as living systems? Well, I'll try and explain this. The next slide shows us a little bit better. In nature, there's a simple pattern in nature. And this simple pattern in nature is seen in everything. And so we have to start to look at this simple pattern in nature in our projects as well. So if we look, every project has its parts, okay? So we'll call the people the parts of our project. And these parts are very important. And the more diverse these parts are, the better. And this is one thing that happens often. We don't have enough diversity in the parts. We don't have enough diversity in our organizations. We often flock together with people that are similar, but that's not going to hold it in a VUCA world. We need to bring together divergent ideas and opinions and people. And so our pattern, this pattern of a living system, is we need our parts. So in an organization or a project, we need our people. And at some point, these people, they need to come together, even though they have diversity, a diversity of ideas and opinions. They have to come together for a common purpose. And that's when the purpose has to be very clear, so that we converge together, so that we can converge together and turn and make something possible. And then when we do that, we create a dynamic a place where we can cultivate really dynamic relations. And the idea of this is to really have a place where we can have dynamic relations within our projects and outside of our projects, so that we're able to create this dynamic relationship where we're learning with people, we're receiving information, we're passing on information, we're developing, we're creating. And the more dynamic these relations, the better. And with these dynamic relations, we're able to create an environment where we can increase the creativity, like our self-creativity, creativity together in our group, and also a way where we can self-organize ourselves and self-integrate, so that we can create an environment where I'm leaving the project or the organization better than I came in. And that's how we look at, and in that I've been regenerated, and my project has been a project that's regenerative. So Dragon Dreaming, as well as Sociocracy, they really look at organizations or projects in this way, as living systems. And the more that we look and we understand what a living system is, the more we can take care of these parts, you know, the divergent ideas, bringing people together towards a purpose, creating a place where these relationships can really grow, and where we can all create together and regenerate ourselves and the world. So going on to the concepts of Dragon Dreaming. Like I said, Dragon Dreaming is a philosophy. So first, before we do the methodology, because anyone can get the Dragon Dreaming book and look at step 1, step 2, step 3 and do it. But what you really need to know is the basic concepts and why we're doing it. Because when you know this, when you're actually working together in your groups and you're feeling your dragons emerge, you'll know how to better deal with it. You'll know what's going on. You'll have conscious awareness of what's going on, and we'll be able to work on ourselves and work on our group, so that we can grow together and bring the best into the world. So first of all, the one idea of Dragon Dream, one of the main concepts of Dragon Dreaming is win-win, win-win-win. Okay, and I'll explain that. Where does this come from? Well, first of all, I think it's important to understand whenever we take part in a project, we are stepping into an area of discomfort, because we are going to be engaging with people. And the idea of Dragon Dreaming is that we're always putting ourselves in a place where we're learning, where we're dancing with our dragons, when we're on our threshold, where we can learn, where we can open up space in the world, and where we can step out of our comfort zone. And there are a few ways to step out of our comfort zone. One, we can travel, for example, to another country that we've never been to, and learn a lot of things, and that's really enjoyable. Or sometimes we might involuntarily step out of our comfort zone, like someone might die in our family, or we might lose a job, and then we'll have to see how we deal with that. Well, in Dragon Dreaming, one thing that often happens, especially when we engage in projects, is conflict. Conflict is another way that we can step out of our comfort zone. Now, the way we deal with it is based on each person and how we deal with it. And if we do deal with it in a way that is towards win-win, we can grow and develop a lot from that. And so how do we do that? To go into this, I need to explain something very quickly. When we do enter into conflict, we often have this stance of, okay, well, I win, I want to win and the other is going to lose. So I have to defend my opinion to the point where the other accepts it. And when we're doing that, what we're doing is we're often defending ourselves based on what we know and hiding what we don't know. So it's very common when we get into a conflict that we deal with it in a way that we can't really enter into a place where we're learning together from this conflict, right? So when we do enter into a conflict, it's very common that I defend my point of view and I hide what I don't know. I hide my weaknesses. And when I'm doing that, I'm putting myself in a superior position to the other because I'm withholding information. I'm withholding my weaknesses. I'm withholding what I don't know. And so I'm putting myself in a superior position towards the other. And I'm being irresponsible in this way because I'm not putting everything on the table, right? So the idea is when I do that, I'm entering into a win-lose situation. I have the courage, I'm using my courage to defend my opinion, to defend my point of view, and I'm having very little consideration for the other because I'm hiding things that I know would probably help the other understand where I'm coming from, but maybe weaken my position. So that's a win-lose. I'm competing with the other person. I can also enter into a position of lose-win, where I'm totally considering the other person's opinion, idea, point of view, and I'm not putting forward my own feelings. Yeah, so we have the puppy there because the puppy is very accommodating. I'm trying to accommodate the other. Well, in that case, what I'm doing is I'm just basically saying to myself, I'm not important. Just let it go, okay? And that's a lose-win. I'm gonna lose and the other person's gonna win. And in the end, it's a really, really bad lose for me because I'm just telling myself, oh, I'm not important. So it's kind of like a double lose. I lose the argument and I lose like confidence in myself. There's a situation also when I don't have the courage to put my views forward and I don't have consideration for the other. And that's a total lose-lose. And I mean, if we want to be really blunt about it, this could be a situation of terrorism. Well, I'm not going to win, then everyone's going to lose. Okay. Or I can go towards a win-win where I open up, I'm more transparent about what's really going on. I show my vulnerability towards the other. I try to connect on a different level with this person so that we can enter into a dialogue where we understand we have differences, but we can unite in our differences to come to a conclusion together. And that's a win-win. And the way that we try to do that in Dragon Dreaming is that we talk about something called mirror neurons. So if I'm really in a situation where I really want to be honest with the other and I really, really want to try and get to a win-win situation, I try and open up a connection of empathy with the other. And when I do that, what happens is my mirror neurons start to send off messages like empathy, 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 empathy. And then what happens is the mirror neurons of the other person start to mimic my neurons. They're mirror neurons. And then in that moment, we have a better chance of making a connection with the other and being more open about what's going on. And being more honest about, the things that we don't know, our weaknesses, things that we were trying so hard to defend before. And maybe together we can get to a place where we can get to a win-win. Okay, next. Another really important concept for us is the idea of ahas. So if you just go to the next slide, Nara. In Dragon Dreaming, we say that, about every 10 minutes we're having ahas, but we don't realize that ahas are these insights, these moments. And where a window to the universe opens up, we receive a really important piece of information. We say, aha, oh, wow. The next day we look at that and we go, oh my gosh, that was so obvious. But it doesn't matter, ahas usually are obvious, but they're little pieces of information that help us have a greater understanding of something. And looking at this pizza, we call our pizza graph. There are things, that I know. Okay, so I know a little bit about Dragon Dreaming. I know a little bit about Sociocracy. I know that I also know things that I know that I don't know. So there are things that I might not know about Sociocracy, and I can ask Ted, or I can ask Jerry, or I can ask Nara. So the things that I know, and the things that I know that I don't know, right? But there's this whole world of things that I don't know that I don't know. And that's huge, that area. That area is huge. And when we practice win-win, and when we practice vulnerability, and when we practice transparency, and when we start to pay attention to our ahas, and when we start to engage with other people on a level, on a more empathetic level, we can open up the doorway to this place of things that I know, I know, I don't know what I don't know. And that's the place where we're going to find solutions to deal with this VUCA world, to make this great turning come about, because the old patterns, the old way of doing things aren't working. So we really need to focus on how we can get to this area together. Okay. And the one way we do get to this area a lot easier is with the next slide, practicing what we call pinakari. And pinakari it comes from the Aboriginal people, the Martu Manjilijara of Western Australia. They're from the desert. And pinakari means deep listening. And the Martu Manjilijara, they live in long, deep silences, right? And we practice that as well when we're doing our projects. So, you know, we might be planning something and maybe some conversation gets a little bit heated, or, you know, we're not able to have a very fluid conversation. And well, we take our little chimes and we, okay, pinakari, anyone can call a pinakari, and we close our eyes and we connect and we breathe. And then after about a minute or so, we go back to doing our work. And I guess what we can do right now is just, we can do a pinakari just to see how that is. And so I would just like to ask everyone to just shut their eyes. And there's the pinakari bell. And then just take a deep breath. And feel your body, whether it's sitting on a chair or on the ground, wherever you are right now. Feel the weight. Feel the texture. As we breathe, you might feel your body a bit heavier, getting a bit heavier, and that might be from the force of gravity, the oldest force on Earth. And as you bring your attention to your body, you might feel that there's some sort of tension, some sort of pain, some sort of discomfort. Well, focus on that, see where it is, perceive where it is. It might have a color, it might have a shape, it might even have a name. Breathe deeply into that tension and let it out. Let your breath out and breathe deeply again into that tension and let it out. And bring your attention to your feet or your legs, which are on the ground, on the floor. And realize that what is under your feet is the earth. And the earth is constantly supporting us, constantly present, constantly embracing us. And if the earth, the support that we have the entire time, if it were a friend, if it had a name, we could call it unconditional love. And know that this unconditional love is present for us all the time, whenever we want. Is just connect, breathe, and you'll feel this connection. And slowly coming back to the group. And this is the pinakadi that we practice. Okay. And going on to the next slide. So I talked about the simple pattern in nature that reflects how we look at projects as living systems. But within Dragon Dreaming, there are 4 elements that are very important that also reflect a living system. And that is the stimulus, that is this one moment, this moment that we might have an idea or a dream for something that we want to do in the world. And then we start to talk about that. We think about how we can bring that into the world. So we're cruising, we're crossing over the limiar, we're crossing over the threshold so that we can make this into real possibility. And then we start to implement it and we get a response from our environment, if it's going well or not. And this response is in the way of feedback. So everything that we do in Dragon Dreaming has these 4 elements, which are the elements of a living system. And in the entire time when we're doing our Dragon Dreaming projects, we can see this happening at all moments of the projects. And we're going to show a little bit more. We're going to show you a little bit more how the stimulus, the threshold, the response, and the feedback look within the project. Okay. Okay, so going on. So those are the basic concepts of Dragon Dreaming. The concepts are more in depth than that. Okay, I'm bringing them in a way that I'm just giving you a review, but we will send off some material so that you can go into more detail about these concepts. There's a lot of beauty behind them and more to learn. Okay, so with our projects as living systems, how do
we see if there are any questions?
Sure, let's go for it. Yeah. Any questions?
Just to check if there is any questions.
Okay, so maybe we can. I just answered one of the questions, so that's good.
Cool. So let's go.
Should I go on? Wait a second. Here's a question. Oh, yes. Can I explain more what the threshold is? Yes. I'm going to explain that in a couple of slides. So if you can just wait a little bit, then I will go into more depth. But basically, what I want to say here is that the stimulus, we are receiving stimuluses the entire time. We are having ahas, we are having ideas, we are having dreams, we are receiving information, and we do very little with it. And if we do nothing with that, the living system dies. Okay, it doesn't go forward. So what happens is with the stimuli that we're receiving, some of it we grab onto it and we think, oh my God, I want to do something with this. I can't stop thinking about it. I can't stop talking about it. I feel good about it when I feel good about myself when I think about this idea. You know what? I'm going to start figuring how to make this happen. So I start researching opportunities. I start finding projects that might be doing something similar. I join together a group of people that might want to do this with me. And then we start planning, we start putting it on paper. So that would be kind of like a threshold. The moment that I start to put the ideas that are in my mind on paper in a way that I can actually do it, and I think about the context in which I can do that project or that dream in, then I'm crossing over the threshold. Okay, and I'll show you in a couple slides what that is in practice.
Can I give a simple example of this? So for instance, there's the stimulus of heat, right? So it's getting warm here and I'm starting to get hot. So my body has this limit of how much temperature it can take. And then when it reaches a certain threshold, I start sweating. Right, so there is this threshold, is this limit of temperature that from which it starts taking an action. So the sweating is the response, and the feedback is, oh, was it enough or not? Am I cool? Is my body temperature regulated now or not? And also, you know, considering myself, my whole being. So if I check and then I see, you know, it's still hot, what I can do is I can take my coat off, and that's another response, right? And then I get feedback. Okay, oh, now it's okay. Yeah, now I'm feeling good. So this is happening all the time in every aspect of life. And what we do is we try to implement this consciously to mimic this aspect of nature.
Nara, you cut off at the end. Did everyone hear Nara?
I just said that this is how we transfer this to the project.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's enough. Thanks.
Okay. And then Laureen said, can you explain how response from environment is distinguished from feedback? Thanks, Nara. That answered my question. Okay. Very good. Okay, so how to transform tensions into positive change. So tensions are also stimulus, and the tensions, idea of tensions comes from sociocracy and not from dragon dreaming. So what comes from dragon dreaming is really the idea of having a dream and making that dream come true, which is also a tension. So the idea of tensions is often looked at as something negative, and it's not. It's just something. And if you want to go to the next slide, a tension is something. It's like if we had an elastic, right? It's that, and we take an elastic between our hands and we stretch it, and there's that tension there. Well, within that tension, there are a lot of opportunities. There are a lot of, there's a lot of creativity. There's a lot of things that can happen between my current situation and my desired future. So attention comes from this gap between what's going on right now and what I desire, or what's going on now and my expectation. And so that tension, when we have that tension and we look at those tensions and we give voice to those tensions, a lot of things can happen. And the way that we do that is when we look at our projects and organizations as living systems, where all the people that are part of that organization are the nerve endings of that organization. And being part of the nerve endings, we're feeling things, and these things have a place where they can be brought and dealt with. And this is the first step in dreaming, looking at our tensions and bringing our tensions to a place where we can process them. So going on to the next slide, the stimulus, looking at our living system, the stimulus has to do with the dreaming phase. The threshold has to do with the planning phase. The response has to do with the doing phase, and the feedback has to do with the celebrating phase. Okay, and I'm going to explain a little bit more what each of those phases are. We just opened up for questions, Nada. Should we just continue a bit more, and then maybe after this part we can ask for questions.
Yes.
So what does this all mean, right? Well, there are four phases in dragon dreaming. There are 4 phases of a project. There's a dream, plan, do, celebrate phase. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it happens in this way. Okay, so it looks like it's a cyclical process, but it isn't necessarily. Okay, so what we do know is that on the side of the individual, that dreams, tensions, they come from individuals. They are usually born from individuals. And what happens is individuals, when they have a dream or when they have a tension, for them to bring this to fruition, for them to bring these dreams to the world, they need people. So there's a bit of a paradox here. The dream comes from one person, but for that person to realize that dream, they need to get people on board with their dream. But they're only going to come on board. If they also feel that that dream is theirs. So there's a process in the dream phase where we invite people to be a part of our project. We do a process where we co-create our dream together, and in that process, the initial dreamer needs to waive their rights to the dream and let their dream die so the new dream can be reborn, with everyone in that dream feeling like they are the initial dreamers, like that the group is the initial dreamer and not that one person that started the dream. And then we start to look at how we're going to make this dream happen. So we plan this dream. We think about, okay, what are some ways we can do it? What are some methodologies that we know to develop our dream? How can we test our dream? And this is all in the planning stage. And then we go to the doing stage. Who does what? How are we gonna monitor our progress in this dream, in this project? And then there's the celebrate phase. How do we evaluate and reflect upon our work as we're doing our project? And the thing is, this happens all the time. So dreaming happens all the time, planning happens all the time, doing happens all the time, and celebrating happens all the time. It looks like it's cyclical, but it's actually fractal. And when I show you the Karabi, when I show you our project map, then you'll understand why it's more of a fractal process, okay? But just to explain a little bit more about the circle. So we have the individual, where the dream starts. Then we start to theorize how, with our dream team, how we're going to be able to realize our project. And then when we take it to the world, that's the environment. The environment is when we're talking about where we're going to develop our project, because our project only becomes real when we do take it to the environment, when we do take it to the world. And then when we take it to the world, the theory that we develop ends up being put into practice. And through the practice, we start to understand what works and what doesn't work. Okay, so going on to the next, within each phase, there are also little sub-steps that we within the dragon dreaming process. So if you can just go to the next slide, Nara. Okay, so not that one, before this. 27.
Yeah, the steps, the
There.
smaller steps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So in the dreaming phase, so I become aware of my dream. I become motivated to talk to people. I become motivated to find out more information. I invite people to become a part of my project. We start to gather information, map out ideas, do some more research. Then we consider alternative ways on how we can develop our project. We design a strategy on how to do it. We test it. We might do a pilot project. Then we start to implement. We decide who does what, and we monitor our progress along the way. And as we do that, we develop new abilities. We start to make transformations within our project, and like within our project group and within the project area. And because of this whole process, we become more wise. So these are the 12 steps of dragon dreaming, and there are also 4 evaluating steps, which I didn't put here. But so this is the dragon dreaming circle, and we also say that this is the empowerment circle. If we use these steps, we're going to create projects that empower. Okay, so going on to the next, Nara, would you like to present the activity?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep. All right, guys. So the first practice that we have for you today is...
Can I ask one question for the on the last slide?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yep, sure.
There was this one thing, gather information and then consider alternatives. Does this gather information mean creating the ideas? Is it this dreaming part where you say,
okay, yeah, so gathering information is anything we do to expand our consciousness about our dream, right? So it might be you know, talking to people to find out if people are interested. It might be mapping out possible places to do the project. It might be thinking of, you know, any type of research that is done that gives us more information about making our dream come possible. And then once we have this information, then we consider alternatives, because what's really common in a project is that we do what we've already done. So, well, we've always done it this way, let's do it this way. And the idea about dragon dreaming is don't always do it the way you've done it. Because when you do that, then you lose a lot of opportunities, that you can have blockages in your project. You avoid risk, and we don't want to avoid risk here. We want to have a calculated risk in our projects. So the idea is we gather enough information so that we can consider different ways of doing something.
And this means for me, because I if I think about it, then for me it's like between dreaming and planning, where you say what are so let's say materializing the alternatives or the idea. So before you can consider alternatives, you just try to, let's write it down or let's create it or whatever. This was the gap I was missing.
Yes, yes. So it's the bridge. It's the bridge. So the gathering information is the bridge of considering alternatives. It's the bridge between dreaming and planning. Okay. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. So the idea of the exercise is actually to work with these steps and to kind of get a sense of them based on a project that you have done in the past. So we're gonna split you guys in groups, in pairs, in breakout groups, in breakout rooms, and you're gonna choose a project that is that you have definitely, and the intention view the project steps and compare them with if you look back to the projects that you have done in your project, to the steps you have done in your to the steps that are here in the Dragon Dreaming. These big phases, dream, plan, do, celebrate, and also the smaller ones within each of the phases. Okay.
Nara, you were breaking up, and I think not everyone heard. So
can you repeat, please?
Yeah, I'll repeat it. So if you can just put the slide on that shows what the activity is. Okay, so what we want you to do is to look at these, to think of a project either that you're working on now or that you worked on in the past, and see if you can find these steps. So see if you can go through these 12 steps, and we're going to put this slide on so that you can look at the steps and you can say, okay, oh yeah, okay, I understand. I became, motivation happened when we came together as a group, and we decided that we really wanted to do this together, and then we collected information because each one decided that they would research a different part. So you're going to try and look at a project that you have lived or a project that you're in right now and try and find the spots, try and find each step. And you also might find that you got blocked in a part. And this is what we really want. We want to see if you can find out, if you can identify maybe where you got blocked and where you were successful in these steps. Okay, so if that's okay, if that's clear, we're just going to Nada's going to form the breakout groups, 2 people. You'll have about 3 minutes, 5 minutes. I'm going to clarify the celebrate stage in the end for sure. This is at the end of the presentation.
Maybe the idea to send them the link to the presentation so they can refer back to the steps, because once we move, they're gonna not see that anymore.
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay, cool. So I'm creating the groups now, and then you will see a button. We'll say join breakout group, breakout room, and then you will join. And when there is 1 minute left, then there will be a sign saying 60, 59, and then we'll start counting down. And then you just leave that, and then you can finish your saying, and that you have 1 minute, and then it automatically bring everyone back into the main room. Okay. Yeah, so the link is there, and
yeah. Go to the second link.
So go to the link, and then the rooms are created. You should be seeing the button to join the rooms now.
I don't see the link. It's in the chat.
Yeah, but not the link to the breakout rooms. I don't get it.
Ah, no, you're going to get it. It should come to you.
It should come as a button. If not, just go to your bar, and then you will see an option to join room.
Maybe you should try again, Nara.
I can't see it either on the bar on
Yeah,
the. There it is.
it should,
Now it is.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, now it is. Yeah. Thank you.
Nara, eu acho que fazer o Circo dos Sonhos, acho que ele vai dar, não vai dar tempo.
Não vai, né?
Uh-uh.
Bom, então vamos passar aí essa parte.
É.
Eu vou desativar. Peraí, deixa eu só parar o vídeo.
Não, tudo bem.
Peraí que eu tô pondo uma pessoa que ficou com uma sala com 3 e uma sala com 2. Pronto. Deixa eu só... Minha gravação, não tô conseguindo pausar. Pausar a gravação. Pronto.
Yes.
And they're coming back.
Oh, coming back. Hello. So we're just going to harvest a couple of voices here and see if anyone has anything they'd like to share or say or any observations. Please feel free to share.
I think not everybody was back when you said it. Only one group was back, I think.
Oh, okay, so let's start again. So I hope everyone's back. And we just want to take a couple of minutes to hear from you. If you learned anything, realized anything, any observations, any ahas that you had doing this process. Would anyone like to share?
Yeah, I'm happy to share something.
Good.
Yeah, so I was just talking to a lovely guy over in Los Angeles. I'm in Bristol in the UK, and everything that the other person was saying, we were resonating with very, very strongly. And it's kind of a relief, and it's also very exciting because we both felt that we've been holding like the flag bearer of our projects for years.
Oh.
And yeah, and we've been interacting with all these different phases that you talked about in this slide on our own for a very long time, and trying to invite people in, but because it's a very different way of thinking and dreaming and doing, and because we're stuck in between, we're at the point of the great turning, is that there are a lot of people still in the old way. So people are coming and going at quite a rate within our project, and trying to figure out where they sit and how they resonate. But both of us are now able to start passing on smaller flags to more people. Once there's more clarity around our project, then you're able to hand over smaller flags and then actually create flags together, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. But it kind of takes that consciousness and that motivation and the ability to engage in all of those steps on your own in order to hold the space for people to come in and participate with you. So that was kind of like a summary of, I think, of what we're talking about. But yeah, and so it's really helpful to do that.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. That's great. Would anyone else like to share? Maddie.
Can I? Yeah, hello.
Go ahead.
Hi, Rachel.
Hi,
And
Maddie.
Finn, who are both in Bristol. I'm in Bristol and they're in Bristol too. So yeah, just to say that my conversation with Laureen really connected with what Rachel just said in that aspect of going from the kind of individual to the collective dream, and sharing the bringing people in and the practicalities of the resources that requires for everybody to participate, and the limitations around people's time and capacity. Yeah, it's just a really interesting moment in that project, the kind of making it a collectively held and owned dream.
Okay, thank you. Maybe we should go on then to talk more about the dream phase, because I think what the both of you are saying really resonates with the dreaming phase, and maybe talk a little bit more about how we do that in Dragon Dreaming and how we deal with bringing people on board. I'm just going to ask that people mute their microphones. Thank you. So when we are in the dream phase, I'm the dreamer. Let's imagine I'm the first dreamer and I have this amazing dream and I realize that I can't do it on my own. I invite people through charismatic communication to be a part of my dream team. And we use charismatic communication so that we can create a win-win field. We can create a situation in which I'm inviting someone to be part of my project without being attached to the response, whether it's yes or no. And the way that we do that is, well, we do pinakari, we connect with the hara, which is this, the section, about 2 or 3 fingers under our belly button, which is our life force. We connect, we bring our consciousness down to the hara. We imagine our bubble, because we all have our bubbles around us, and we imagine the bubble of the other people in front of us that we're going to make this invitation with. And I try and visualize that person's bubble, and then I breathe into my own bubble so that I can expand my own bubble so that it embraces the bubble of the other. And then I, instead of coming straight forward with the words that I want to use, I first think about the presence that I want to bring, the tone of voice, and then the thoughts, and then finally the words. And I make my invitation. I invite someone to be part of my project, and I'm not attached to yes or no, because what we really want in the end are people who are going to be mothers and fathers of the dream, and not uncles and aunts. Because uncles and aunts, they can, pick up a child and drop them off when they've had enough, and parents can't do that. So that's what we want. We want parents to be a part of this, to be a part of the same dream. And then we form our dream team, and then we form a dream circle. And at the dream circle, the person who had the first dream tells them about all the information that they've been able to, that they've researched, that they've come up with, all the information they have about the dream to this point, so that everyone has the same amount of information. And then the dreamer asks a question, and the question is, what do each of you need to happen in this dream so that this dream can also be 100% your dream? And at that moment, we start to dream the dream that I put on the table, but then people bring their perspective and their aspect that they need to have in that dream to the dream, and we write down all the dreams. And we do it like we do in Sociocracy. We do rounds. It's not a brainstorming session, it's rounds. We do it in rounds. And if I need to pass, I pass. That's fine, it doesn't matter, but we keep on going until we have no more dreams. And there are very few rules to the dream circle, but one of the rules is that we say what we want and not what we don't want. So we're always focusing on the dream. And we try to maintain a synergy and a rhythm so that, we don't get bored in the process, so that we're bringing energy into the process. And so we have someone who writes down the dreams, everyone in the circle dreams, including the first dreamer, the person who brought the dream, until we really feel that that dream has everyone in it. And then in the end of it, we read the dream as if it happened. So we read it in the past tense. And then our evaluation of it is, if we were really moved by that, if we could see ourselves in that dream, we're ready to go forward. And if not, then we need to dream some more. Or sometimes at that point, someone will say, you know what, I don't think this is my dream. And that's okay. Doesn't matter. Because like I said, we want mothers and fathers in our dream. So that's the dream phase. And it's really easy to do. Methodologically, it's really easy to do a dream circle. You can find it in the material that we're going to send you. But what's really hard is to dream. And people have difficulties dreaming because our society doesn't accept dreaming anymore. You know, dreamers are thought of as people who are like in the air, you know, and not taken very seriously. Dreams are often thought of as ridiculous. So people have a fear of bringing their dreams. And so we really have to reconnect with the idea and the importance of dreaming and heal through our dreams. And so this aspect of dreaming in Dragon Dreaming, it's methodologically, it's easy. But in practice, it's hard because we have a lot of issues with dreaming that we really need to get back, that we need to deal with and get back so we can do a lot of healing in society. So going on to the next slide.
Just to say something here, Tanya, just so you understand the logic of the slides. Here at the bottom, you have the steps. So these are the same steps that you saw in the big wheel, right? The smaller steps within dreaming. And here at the left side, it's all the tools, the practice that we use within this phase, right? So the main practice here in the dream phase is the dream circle, as Tanya just explained.
So I already spoke about this, but yeah, basically we form our dream team and we form our dream circle. And when we need to, we gather information if we need to before we do our dream circle or after. Sometimes we need to gather more information. But once we've done this, once we have our dream team and our dream circle and we feel like we're ready, we can move on. We can pass over the threshold and go on to planning. And the planning phase is when we start to put things down on paper. And so the steps of planning are doing our specific objectives, our strategic objectives, our umbrella phrase, which is a phrase that in 2 sentences or so can really explain what our project is about in a very simple and inspiring way. We can do stakeholder mapping and field force mapping. But I'm going to explain a little bit how we do the objectives in the umbrella phase because we do it in a really creative way. And these two ways of doing objectives and doing the umbrella phase, we've used a lot in Sociocracy to develop circles and roles. And we're going to talk about that next week, but I first want to explain how we do it in Dragon Dreaming. Okay, so if we can go on to the next slide. Strategic objectives. So what do we do when we want to look at our define our strategic objectives? We read our dream circle and then we have a question. And everyone needs to answer this question. What are the things we need for our dreams to come true? And I put things here because it's really open. What are the things we need, right? So everyone's going to get 4 Post-its and they write down the things, 1 thing for each Post-it. And then we can group those together how we want, okay? We can group them together really quickly where everyone just comes together and groups things that are common, or one by one, a person can go up, put up your Post-its, and then the next person comes up and will group things that are similar or create new columns. The idea is once we have grouped together the similar Post-its, we can only have between 6 and 8 columns. So that's the rule. Okay, between 6 and 8 columns. And then once we have the 6 to 8 columns, if you want to go to the next slide, please, Nara, we break out into groups of 2. And groups of 2 will take a column and they'll underline the key words in that column and they'll form an objective. They'll form a phrase that is like an objective, that represents that column. And the objective has to start with an action verb. So it has to be an action verb. It has to be orientated in action. It has to be something that when we read it, we can see it happening so we can understand if that is happening or not. It needs to be limited within the scope of our dream. Okay, so basically that's an objective. It's limited to the scope of our dream. We need to use an action verb, and it's something that we can I don't want to say measure, because it's not necessarily measurable in a quantitative way, but it's something that if it's happening, there are evidences that we can see that it's happening. Okay. Other than that, you can write the objective how you want. We're not very picky in Dragon Dreaming. What we really want here is good enough for now, which we also have in Sociocracy. We want whatever's good enough so that we can get our project going. And then once we have these objectives, once everyone in the group has written up these objectives, we're going to do Dotocracy, where we decide what our 2 or 3 objectives, our strategic objectives are. And the reason, the way that we decide that, the way that we vote, which objectives are our strategic objectives, the ones that we really want to focus on, we ask the question, which one of these objectives, if done first, will help us realize, will help us do make all of the other objectives come true? Because sometimes there are certain objectives, if we do those ones, then they'll help all the other objectives happen. So that's what we focus on. We focus on what are those objectives that if we focus on now will help us realize all the objectives in the end, okay? And then once we've done that, we go on to our umbrella phrase. So that's on the next slide. And what we do for the umbrella phrase, it's really, really fun. Whenever and we've done this actually for mission statements, for purposes, for visions, okay? We call this the umbrella phrase because in Dragon Dreaming, it's just what we really want is just a phrase, a sentence that will be inspiring. It will be clear, and it will be easy for us to present to people if they ask us about our project, okay? So if we want a purpose, then we can give instructions so that it will be written as a purpose, or if we want a mission, we can give instructions for it to be written as a mission. But when we're doing an umbrella phrase, we leave it basically open, okay? And we just say that we want a phrase that is inspiring and clear and concise. And so what we do is we give the group 20 minutes, only 20 minutes, and everyone has a piece of paper, a pen, we do a pinakari, and then we say, based on your dreams, based on your objectives and your strategic objectives, if you were to present your project in an inspiring and clear way for a 12-year-old to understand, how would you explain it? And then each person starts to write down a phrase or a couple phrases. The first person who finishes writes that phrase down on a big flip chart paper right in the middle. Once that person has written that phrase down, everyone puts their papers and pens down and they start to focus on that phrase that is on the flip chart paper. And in silence, people can they can move the words around, they can add new words, they can take out words, they can scratch out the entire phrase and put another one. They can do whatever they want. But after the 20 minutes, the phrase that is on the paper is the phrase for that project, okay? And it's very difficult because often people want to speak and you can't speak, you have to remain in silence. Because the one thing about writing is that people have a fear of writing often, a fear of writing the wrong thing. If we say something and we make a mistake, not everyone's going to remember. But if we have something written down and it's right in front of everybody and somebody think that word doesn't fit or it doesn't make sense, it's right there in front of everybody. So often people have difficulties getting into this activity until the very end. And then when they do that, it ends up becoming some sort of war at the end where people are trying to really change the phrase so that it becomes a phrase that represents everyone. But usually what we find in the end, people are very happy with the phrase. And if not, we leave it. And then 2 weeks later, people can come back to the phrase and do another one. But we've worked with a lot of different organizations doing their purpose in this way. Okay. Any questions about this part of the process, the planning process? I'm not going through all of the planning processes, but I think these two are very simple and very and work very, very well, and are easy to understand in the Dragon Dreaming manual. So I wanted to present those. Whoever ends first and is happy to write it down. Yeah, okay.
I was just answering this question.
Okay, so maybe we can move on if no one has a question, and we can go on. Yeah, someone has a question.
Not a question, but just an observation. You know, I'm just liking the way this is managing the tension between the individual and the group. You know, holding the both and of individual input and group decision making. So that's I'm just noticing that. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, good. And I think when people have to remain silent, and I think that's something, I think you even realize that even more. Because when we enter into a dialogue, I think those people who speak louder or can articulate even better have more of a voice. But when people are in silence, it really is this dynamic. You really see this individual group dynamic take place in a very interesting and beautiful way. Yeah, thanks for the observation. Okay, maybe we can go on then, Nara, to the next part. Okay, so we're going into the doing phase. So the doing phase is really like our strategic planning. You know, we have our objectives, we have clarity on what we want to focus on. So now how are we going to do it? How are we going to do all this? And we do this by creating a map of our project. And that's called a kahabirt, which is also a karabirt, which is also an indigenous word, an Aboriginal word, which means spider web. And you'll see why when I show you in a bit. And for me, the karabirt, which I love doing the karabirt, really, to me, shows a better picture of what projects really do look like. So you really, in Dragon Dreaming, we don't see projects as something linear. We see them as something living, like living systems, where you have a lot of flows happening at the same time. And when we develop this map, we also, on this map, we decide who does what. And basically through volunteers, and I'm also going to show you that. In the doing phase, we also budget. We do our budget and our schedule, and we do this a really, really funny way, which I'll explain after. As a group, we develop the success indicators, and we also have our meetings to accompany our work and our progress. Okay, so I'm going to go first to the karabirt. So I can show you. So this is a karabirt. So basically, if you take a Gantt chart, right, which probably most people are used to seeing, or like an Excel spreadsheet with phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 of the project, well, in Dragon Dreaming, this is what it would look like. Okay, and as you see, we have our karabirt is divided into 4 sections: the dreaming, the planning, the doing, and the celebrating. And what we do is, in a group, we have our post-its, and people come up with all of the activities that need to be done to make these objectives come true. And then we take all these post-its and we decide whether they're a dreaming activity, a doing activity, a planning activity, a doing activity, or a celebrating activity. And then we start to put them onto our flip chart. So if they're dreaming activities, we put them in the dreaming phase. If they're planning, we put on planning phase, doing phase, celebrating phase. And then what we need to do is we need to now map the flows of our project. So I don't know, Nara, can you show the inicio? Can you show the, yeah, so where Nara is showing that little dot in the, yeah, that little dot in the beginning, it's the start of our project. And so all of our flows need to come out of the start and they need to go to the finish. So they need to go, it needs to come from the start into a dreaming activity and then pass on to a planning activity and then on to a doing activity and then on to a celebrating activity. And each of these activities need to be directly related to each other in order to create a flow. Okay, so that's what we do. That's how we map. We map our activities from by mapping those activities that are directly related to each other. And what's beautiful about this process is that when we are doing it, we will find that some of the flows stop. They get blocked. They get blocked maybe in the dream stage, or in the planning stage, or in the doing stage, or in the celebrating stage. And so the Karabirt shows us where we are being blocked in our project. And if we are blocked in the doing stage, what do? We add an activity that could connect our planning to our celebrating with an activity that is connected. Okay, so it shows us, it's a map because it shows us where we're getting blocked before we get blocked, and we can correct before we even start the project. Okay, so these are our flows.
Let me just answer this one.
Yeah.
So what program was used to map this? So this is just a drawing, right? But there are a few applications that we use, but mainly this was created to be done on paper with just post-its. So the tasks, the dots would be tasks with post-its that we would write and then place them in the dreaming, in the planning, in the doing, or in the celebrating phase, right? And then this would be built together, like cooperated by the team as well, right? But because we have all this sparse, how to say this, these teams that are everywhere, then we also use a few tools. Maybe I don't know if you remember, sometimes we use Trello, sometimes we use tools that allow you to do post-its. Do you remember any of the tools that could be used, Tanya?
This one is Murali. Murali is the best, but it's you have to pay for it. But this one is Murali. There's Dikit.
Murali, yes, that's the
Murali and Dikit. Yeah, Murali, Murally. It's the best.
Murally.
Yeah.
Murali. Yes.
That's right.
And the other question here, just to clarify, we're in the doing stage. Actually, the Karabi is created in the planning phase, but then it goes on into the doing phase. And it shows all the phases because you need to plan all the phases, right? So then you need to do the phases. Right?
Yes. Yeah, so this is very important. So just because we dreamt our dream doesn't mean that we have finished the dreaming phase. We are going to be dreaming a lot of other things in our project. We're going to be planning a lot of other things in our project. So let me give you an example. So Jerry and Ted called us and said, oh, let's have a meeting. Can we have a Zoom? Sure. Oh, can you guys do a workshop on Dragon Dreaming and Sociocracy? Oh, okay, sure. We can do it. Okay, so then what did we do? So one of our dreaming activities was to get our old presentations and get little things that we thought were really interesting from our old presentations, put them together and start from there. So that was dreaming. Okay, we were getting things that we already had, looking at slides that we had done that we thought were interesting. And then we went to planning. What was our planning? Well, we put together a presentation. That was our planning. We decided who would say what. Then we finished our presentation. Now we're in the doing stage. We're actually presenting. Right now we're presenting. So we're doing, and celebrating is at the end when we get feedback from you and when we get feedback from Ted and Jerry. And then when both of us sit down and say, okay, well, this we could have done better. This we could have, maybe improved for next time. We'll do this and this and this. So that is our flow. So you see that dreaming, planning, doing, and celebrating are happening the entire time. Just because we dreamt this with Ted and Jerry doesn't mean we dreamt it already. We had to do other dreaming to make it happen.
Yeah. And the other question was, what are 3 dots, the orange dots here? So this first one is what Tanya already mentioned, is start. And the last one here at the bottom is finish. And then this one is internal, external, is that it?
Yeah.
I can't read.
Yeah.
Internal and external. So here we usually put all the tasks that are more internal to the team, right? So if the team is myself and Tanya and Jerry and whatever we have to do in this project, then we would put here. And everything else that concerns other people, for instance, the people that are invited, participants, the World Wide Web, or whatever people that are not us, would come more towards right. And in the middle are usually the resources that are needed So they would come in the middle. But it's very, very organic, and it's just like no brainer, you know, just pick a place, and it's just to facilitate, right? No paralysis analysis, analysis paralysis.
So when you see a blockage, how do you deal with that? When you see a blockage, you look at the flow that's there, you look at what activities are there, and then you look at the phase that doesn't have an activity that's connected to that flow, and then you create that activity that will help you with that flow. So let's imagine that we created a flow, put together the presentation, present the presentation, and then reflect upon the presentation with members of the webinar. But we had nothing in the dreaming phase. Well, we'd have to think, okay, well, what kind of dreaming activity do we need before we put the presentation together? Oh, we can look at other presentations that we've done. Or we can do a dream circle on how we want to present our presentation. Or each of us can, I don't know, make a list of the slides that we want to do. And then from there, start to put it together. So you would look at the activity that's missing and connect it to the ones that are already there. So I think if we go on to the next slide, Nara, then it might be a little bit clearer on how we do this. So first in the group, we do a brainstorming session. In the brainstorming session, we write down the activities or the activities that need to be done using action verbs. And we use action verbs because then we have more clarity of where it's going to fit into what phase, if it's a dreaming activity, a planning, a doing, or a celebrating. And then we can put them into columns, like a dreaming column, planning column, doing column, and celebrating column. And then we go on to the next part where we put together, we get our flip chart paper. And if you want to go to the next slide, Nara, we go to our flip chart paper, and then we divide it into 4 parts. And then we start to build our Karabi, putting the post-its on the Karabi. And then after that, we go on to the next slide. We make our connections. So we make the connections. We can do it all as a group, or we can do, whoever likes to do the connections, look at the flows, can do that. I absolutely love doing the Karabi. So I love doing this part. And once we've done this, what's interesting here is that we get into self-management. Once we have our map done, the first thing about the map is to see if we have completed flows. So to make sure that all the activities, each flow has an activity from the start to the finish. And the next thing that we need to do is decide who does what. And the way that we do that is using our pencils, our pens, our colored pens. And each person gets a pen and starts to put their initials beside the activities that they want to do. So if I put my initials in green beside 5 activities, that means that I'm saying that I'm responsible for that activity, that the group can count on me to do that activity. I'm responsible for it, I'm going to do it, and I know how to do it. I can also put my name in black. If I put my name in black beside some activities, I am saying I know very well how to do this activity, but I don't want to do it. I'm sick of doing that, but I can consult, I can help, I can give advice, I can be available to offer help, but I won't do it. Or I can put my name, my initials in red beside some activities. And if I put it in red, what I'm saying is, I have no idea how to do this, but I really, really want to learn. So I'm not going to be responsible for this, but I'll help and I'll learn. So this way we can learn how to be the champions of the activity, being totally responsible for that, or consultants for that activity, or learners. So we can put ourselves in these 3 positions, and that's really beautiful about Dragon Dreaming, because we can, in the same project, we can have different roles, okay? Going on, oh, and one other thing, sometimes there might be an activity that doesn't have anyone on it. Once again, we can see blockages in our project. We can see if we don't have the abilities in our group, or if we don't have the energy in our group. And then we deal with that. We see, okay, what do we got to do? Do we have to take this activity away? Do we have to get rid of this flow? Do we need to hire someone else? Do we need to bring someone else onto our team? So once again, it shows us blockages. Now, how do we use this cut-a-beard? Well, it's a board game, our cut-a-beard, looking at this next slide. Whenever we have a meeting, we take our cut-a-beard out, okay? And we look at all the activities. And once we've started an activity, we color it in halfway. And then we celebrate, oh, this has started. And when we've finished an activity, we color in the whole thing and we celebrate again. So this is a way that we can monitor our project. And we can also use this to make priorities. So if we see, if we realize, oh, you know what, we're really we've passed the planning stage and we really got to get into the doing stage. Let's prioritize activity 6 and 7 for next week. We can put like a red circle around it so that people really put their attention to that. The people who are in green, make note of that. And then next week, we hope that's done. Okay, so as a group, we can look where we are, and we also can focus on where we want to go. So that's our board game. That's what works as a board game. It's a lot of fun, actually. Okay, so I think we'll just go on to the celebrating stage, and then if anyone has a question, we'll take questions, okay? Because we're getting close to the end of our webinar. So going on to, just before this, Nara, there's another slide. So in a lot of projects, when we do projects, it's very common to have, in a lot of planning methodologies, the planning and doing stages. In Dragon Dream, we have a dreaming, planning, and doing stage. Okay, and what happens is what happens in a lot of projects is that when we are in the doing stage, there's a lot of burnout because there's no celebration that is done throughout the process. And what I mean by celebration is we don't stop and reflect on our progress. We don't stop and reflect on what's going on as a team. We don't stop and deal with conflicts. And that is very trying for the team. So when we don't have a celebrating stage, what has been realized through research is that 90% of projects enter into burnout, but in the doing phase, and often don't even get to the end of the project. Okay, so Dragon Dreaming has integrated celebration into the project because through the research, when they realized that one of the reasons for burnout was because there wasn't this moment of reflection and evaluation and time for people to connect and be able to talk about their feelings and also look at all of the advances as well as the difficulties that they've experienced as a team. So celebrating, how do we celebrate? Well, celebrating is often done even before we start a project. We can celebrate people before we start a project. We can celebrate who people are so that we can dream together. Throughout the process, in every moment, every phase, we try to celebrate the dream phase. We try to celebrate the planning phase, the doing phase, the celebrating phase, so that we can constantly make adjustments throughout our process. Okay, so there are lots of different evaluations or retrospectives or things that we do so that we can take time to look at the project, look at the team, and see what adjustments we need to make. There's also, we have a moment where we look at the different learning types and Dragon Dream types. So some people are more dreamers, some people are more planners, some people are more doers, and some people are more celebrators. And when we look at our team and we can identify what type of profiles that we have in our group, we can help those people excel more in their sphere. So dreamers often need to have place to use their imagination. Planners need coaching often to be able to get what's on paper into the world. Doers often need support to do because they just want to go. And celebrators need space to reflect. And so when we start to realize this about our group, we start to open up these spaces so that these different learning styles can also excel and also learn other learning styles. And I already talked about evaluation and reflection, but evaluation and reflection, it's done every step of the way. And we have a lot of different processes that we use. It depends what we're looking for in what we're looking to evaluate. But the idea really is that celebration is a time when we can not only evaluate how we're going, but how we're doing in our project, but also opening up a space where we can connect on an emotional level, so that we can learn more about ourselves, more about each other, and through that have more ahas and get to that place where I don't know what I don't know. Because getting to what I don't know is usually through this deep connection with other people. So that's the celebrating phase. And
it also,
sorry, Nara?
Yeah, and it's also going back to the individual, right? Because if you remember the wheel, it started in the individual, but it's a wheel, so it's a spiral, right? So it comes back to the individual. So celebrating is about, what have I learned from the project? And looking back and seeing how I'm transformed by it as well, right? So it's all these lessons learned, the results that were achieved, but also how I was transformed. So it's going back to this individual, and then seeing with new eyes and being able to dream again into the next phase of the project or into a new project, right?
And I think that if you go to the next slide, it really shows what you're talking about. Because exactly what Nara was saying, like the celebrating phase is on the side of the individual, and the individuals are often, when we look at personalities, often this individual side is more connected to the introverted side, and introverts aren't usually celebrators. Well, in Dragon Dreaming they are, because they are the people who like to reflect, reflect on their own, who like being alone, who like to open this space where they can ponder and really learn from themselves and from others about themselves, right? So it's really interesting what Nara said. It's in most places the celebrator is on the extroverted side. In Dragon Dreaming, it's on the other side, because it really has this individual focus on growth and development. Yeah, and these are the types that, like I don't want to go too much into detail here because I know we're at our end, but when we look at the types, when we look at our profile within Dragon Dreaming, we set up some ribbons on the ground, and we walk on these ribbons to feel where we are in terms of introversion and extroversion, in terms of being more theoretical based or more based on intuition and sensation, and we can find out where we are in the wheel. So, and this changes, of course, depending on the project, depending on what type, where you are in your life at that moment. So, yeah. And I think that's just, if we would just want to go to the next slide, just creating space for celebration. We do that by looking what's good, what's not, looking at exploring suggestions, looking at what we learned, and especially, and this is really important in Dragon Dreaming, being able to see one another. So that we can open up a space where I can see you and you can see me, and we might not love each other, but you know what? We can see each other, and based on that, we can move forward and we can grow. And appreciation and feedback. It's really about acknowledging oneself and acknowledging others, and opening up this space where we can have these feedback cycles that come quickly, and that come in a way that we can deal with them quickly, so that we can constantly improve as individuals, as a team, and also the results of our project. So that's it, Nat. I think maybe either questions or evaluation checkout. I think we only have 3 minutes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, if there are any burning questions, I have been answering some questions through chat, but if there is any other questions, we are happy to answer. And if you need to leave like right away, just please leave your evaluation and your checkout in the chat before you leave. And if not, stay a little bit more to answer some questions.
I saw a question from Jerry, which said something about membership. I can't find it now. The Dream Circle throughout has set or defined membership. There's an invitation that's given in the beginning. And then if the person accepts, then they become part of the dream team and the dream circle. Once the dream has been developed, there's an evaluation of how people feel in that dream. If they want to continue on, they can continue on. But at the very end of the project, which I didn't explain, we'll explain next time, we do the budget for the dream. And then there's a, my gosh, Nara, I'm trying to translate it now, I can't remember. I'm trying to translate the part of the budget. So what we do is we
20 minutes budget.
No. Anyways, we do the budget, and then we look at the amount of the project, the dollar amount of the project. And then everyone is asked if they are willing to, if anything happens in the project, and for some reason, that project, for some reason, there's some sort of debt, if the project incurs some sort of debt, if the person would be willing to take out of their own pocket to cover that debt. Each person is asked that question. And then the people who say yes, they are considered the people that can make the big decisions about money. And the reason why we do this, it has nothing to do with money, it has to do with commitment. Because if you are really committed to a project, it's going to happen. It's not really based on the money, but because money is a way of curing our wound around money and around community. This question is raised with people in the end to see if they are fully committed, because when you use money as one of the options is if you're committed or not, people really reflect on that. And when they have committed to the dollar value, they often commit more deeply to the project. But I can go into more detail about that the next time.
She asked if we could go again through what is the dreaming circle?
Sure. So we form our dream team. The first dreamer takes time to give the group information about everything that they know about the dream. So if they've contacted places, if they have ideas where they might want to make that dream happen, if there's money involved, if there's already a budget, like any information whatsoever that but that there is about the dream will bring to the table so that everyone has the same amount of information. Once that's done, then there's a question that is asked to the group. The first question is, who would like to write down the dream? And then someone volunteers to write down everyone's dream on a piece of paper. The second question is, what needs to happen in this dream for you to feel 100% committed to the dream? And then we do rounds, and the person will say what their dream is, and the person who's writing down the dreams writes down the essence of the dream. They don't have to write word for word, but they do have to write down the dream so that when we read it back, it's easy to understand. We keep on going until there are no more dreams. The rule is that you have to say what your dream is. You have to say what you want and not focus on what you don't want. So for example, let's say I say, oh, we're dreaming about having an event, a Sociocracy event. And I say, oh, I don't want it to be in the city. Nara might say to me, oh, do you mean you would like it to be in the countryside? Yes. Okay, so we only interrupt someone when we're trying to help them go towards their dream and focus on what they want and what they don't, and not what they don't want. We don't interrupt people. Everyone's dream is valid. You know, it all goes. We need to set a time. This is really important. So if we're gonna dream a dream that's gonna be a 2-year project, we say, okay, this is gonna be a 2-year project, so that we try to dream things that can happen in the 2 years. And other than that, we just keep on dreaming. We keep on doing the rounds until no one else has a dream to add, and to the point where everyone feels that they've put forward their dreams. And then once everyone has said all of their dreams, then we take that dream. Usually the person who wrote the dream takes the entire dream and reads it as if it happened already. So the event, our Sociocracy event, was amazing. There were 300 people. It was in the countryside, and there was music and vegan food, and so. And you take every dream that was written, and you write and you read it as if it has happened, and then you just wait. Once you've read it in the past tense, you just wait, and then you ask everyone, "How was that? Are you in? Is that your dream?" And then people say, "Yeah, that's my dream." And if they say, "No, I need to dream more," okay, they can go back to dreaming, or they can say, "No, it's not my dream. I think I shouldn't be part of this team." And we celebrate that. We celebrate the transparency and the honesty. But that's the process. And often I think it's good to do a visualization. Sometimes I use drumming, use pinakari before we start dreaming, because like I said, it's methodologically it's easy, but people have difficulties dreaming. So sometimes it's hard for people to dream. They usually, especially planners, they like to plan right away. So we have to help the planners to dream, and not, "Oh, I hope we have an Excel spreadsheet with all of our activities clearly laid out." Well, that's not really a dream. That's kind of more of a planning thing. We want to look at the bigger picture. That's it. The dream, if the dreams, Bernadette said, what if the dreams don't align? That's no problem. If the dreams don't align, it's okay. We don't have to worry about it. Often they don't align, but even though they don't align, in the end, often things just seem to click. And then if they don't align and someone says, "No, I can't go forward. I can't go forward with that dream. I'm totally against that dream." Then what we need to look at is the two dreams that are in conflict, and we see what the necessity behind that dream is. And then we try and connect through that. But often we don't even need to do that. Often we can just go to the planning stage, and just by doing the planning stage, it deals with the conflicting dreams. We can often deal with both dreams. And one thing that I didn't say about win-win, it's really about making 100% of our dreams come true. So if my dream is different than Nada's, we have to come together in a way that I have to work 100% to make her dream come true, and she has to do the same with mine. So instead of being conflicting, we say, "Okay, how can we work together so that both of our dreams can come true?" And that's really when we need to go to what I don't know.
And that's so this question. So everybody needs to be on board with all the dreams. Yes. So that's the win-win, right? And then to everyone to be 100% everyone's dreams. And there is this commitment test. So can we all think that this is no longer an individual's dream, but a collective dream? And are we all together in this to make this collective dream come true? So this is, yeah.
So yeah, so I think that's it.
So if there are no other questions, I think you can just leave it like this, and then we see you guys again next week. And then I'm going to ask Ted to send the ebook, the Dragon Dreaming ebook, and also this presentation that we used today to everyone through email. So you have all the material and more information. Then maybe we have questions for us next time.